Okay. When I decided to divorce my husband after I found out that he had cheated on me, I didn't reckon that it was going to be a one-for-one deal, that I had to also divorce my father-in-law. It wasn't that I had a terrible relationship with him in the first place. In the 18 years that I had known my father-in-law, he had been really, really nice to me. But all that changed the moment I filed for divorce. So one day, shortly after I did that, I had a big fight with my husband. We'll just call him Jay as well. And after the fight, I was shaken in tears. I took the kids to my mom's place. An hour later, I was back home to get a few things for my kids and myself, just for a couple of days to tie us over until I could get my head together and figure out our longer-term arrangements. As I was moving around the house gathering things, 2 policemen dropped in on the house. Hi, they poked their heads in. Did someone call for the police? I just paused in my tracks. I was puzzled. And then I heard Jay coming down the stairs. Oh, great, you guys are here. My wife's removing things from the house. Can you just make sure that she doesn't take anything that doesn't belong to her? The 2 policemen stood there for a while trying to figure out what to do. As they were doing that, my father-in-law arrives. Oh, hi, Dad, I said. I'm sorry the police are here, because this was really unpleasant. I didn't call them. I know. I asked my son to call them, he said. And he looked at the 2 policemen and he said, and the 2 of you better make sure that she, and he pointed at me, doesn't steal anything from the house. That stung really badly, especially since it came from somebody that until recently I actually respected. I looked at the police, pleading, willing them to say something, that this was a waste of taxpayers' money, that they didn't have a right, that, I'm not subjected to something like this. Instead, one of them walked over to me and said, "Ma'am, if you don't mind, could you just let us take a look at what you're taking with you?" Now, these were my things. These are my kids' things. And this was really humiliating. That day, I actually had empathy for domestic workers, many of whom, when they are packing to go home, their employers insisted on checking through every single piece of their luggage. Anyway, I decided to obediently comply. I reached for the nearest bag, opened it, and showed it to the policeman. He leaned over and made a feeble attempt to inspect whatever was inside. Now, in the first place, how was he supposed to know what was inside belonged to me or not? So we both knew that he was just a pawn in the whole charade. Click, a flash goes off. We blinked, we looked up, hunting for the source of that light. There, standing at the corner of the living room, was my father-in-law, camera in his hand, grinning to himself. Click, another flash goes off. I was like a deer in the headlights. There was this near panic gripping me. I couldn't breathe. My heart was thumping so loudly in my chest, I'm sure he could hear it. I turned and looked at the policeman. He looked at me, and I could see that he was feeling sorry for me. But he did nothing. Nobody in the room did anything. I was all alone. And I realized at that moment that the only person who was going to be able to stop this was me. And I did absolutely nothing. I put my head down, bit my tongue, kept my mouth shut, like a lamb to the slaughter. In my head, I could hear my mother's voice. Be good, be nice, be polite, be respectful. Don't challenge your elders. Well, even if the elder happens to be this sadistic, psychopathic old man who seemed to be thoroughly enjoying himself in the process of humiliating and breaking me. Mechanically, I reached for another bag, and then another, and click, and flash, and repeat. This was so difficult for me. I was wanting to cry. My eyes were burning, but I refused to shed a single tear. I wanted to scream so badly inside, but I refused to. I gritted my teeth till it hurt. And then finally we got to the last bag. I reached for it and I could see my father-in-law getting ready to snap another picture. At this moment, as I reached up with the bag, I turned and stared directly at that camera of his. And I smiled, bringing out the biggest, brightest grin I could. Click, flash, defiance. I continued looking at him and smiling till my cheeks burned. There was still fight in me. The police was apparently stunned by this silent act of defiance. And he recovered and told me, "Ma'am, I've checked everything. You may go with your things." I gathered the stuff, I held my head high, and I walked out with a smile so wide, I'm sure my mom would have approved. Thank you.